Hi, I'm Father Jim McEwen, and this is a message to the people of Chatswood Catholic Parish as we begin to live life differently in this time of physical distancing because of the coronavirus. Let me take you to the words of the 1970s disco hit by Boney M. I'm sure you'll recognize the words. By the rivers of Babylon, there we sat down, and there we wept as we remembered Zion. For how could we sing the Lord's song in a strange land? These are also the words of Psalm 137, a song of lament by the people of Israel. Why did they weep, and why couldn't they sing the Lord's song in a strange land anymore? There were two things which were important to the people of Israel. The first was that they lived in the land, the promised land which God had given them, and the second was the temple they had built in which they believed God physically dwelt. But in 536 BC, the temple was destroyed and the people were taken as exiles into Babylon. And there, separated from the land God had given them and with no temple in which to worship, they felt abandoned and adrift, like God had left them behind, and they were truly in a strange land. The way they had experienced God before, the way they experienced their identity as people before, was now gone. And perhaps we might resonate with that experience of feeling that we too are in a strange land in more ways than one at this time. Our work has changed, or worse, has disappeared. Our home life has changed. The way we experience freedom and travel and recreation have all been curtailed. And for many of us, the way we pray has also changed, because we can no longer go to church to pray in the physical building or to share the Eucharist together, which for so many of us has been the cornerstone of our prayer life since we were children, and for some people maybe even every day. For reasons which are beyond our control, we can no longer experience God in the same way we have before. So perhaps we can learn from the experience of the Israelites. What did they do when they could no longer worship as they used to? They lamented. They cried out to God in an authentic way. They didn't just say nice words to God. They cried out their anger and their sadness. It was a really real way to pray. But then they leaned in close to God and they dug deep and they discovered new ways to pray, new ways to worship, and new ways to be the community of faith. And in that time of Israel's exile, significant parts of the Old Testament, the Hebrew scriptures, were compiled and written. New ways of thinking about God and God's action in the world began to emerge, including the idea that maybe God's promises would not all be fulfilled here on earth, but in fact there might be another life beyond death, and there God will fulfill all his promises. Well, the people of Israel 50 years later returned to the land, and there they rebuilt the temple, and there was a resurgence in prayer and national pride. They rebuilt the temple, but in 70 AD, the Romans destroyed that temple too. And the destruction of that temple became the trigger for the Christians, the newly emerged group of followers of Jesus, to define themselves as a distinct community of faith rather than just as a group within Judaism. And over the next 30 years, from 70 to 100 AD, is when Christianity really emerged as its own religion, and most of the New Testament, including the Gospels, were written in that time. So we might be able to see as we look at the life of the people of our scriptures that the greatest advances in human understanding of God and experience of God have come in times of social dislocation and disruption, not in times of peace and ordinariness that we now probably take for granted. So perhaps we can look at how they responded to see what God might do in us and with us in this time of disruption, dislocation in our life and our church. Our exile will last only months, not decades. We can be quite confident that life will go back to normal again in some way. But I think our time in this strange land can be a time when we are renewed and purified, and where we can reach out to God in new ways, and we'll discover new possibilities which we couldn't have imagined even a few weeks ago. This is going to take courage. It's going to take honesty. It's going to require us digging deep in prayer and reflecting deeply upon what is going on in our lives and the lives of people around us. But let's go on this journey together. Let's not give up and run away and let go and think God's abandoned us, because God has not. God is near to us as God was near to his people throughout the scriptures. God is near to us in this troubled time, and perhaps we can grow close to him now more than ever. So in the weeks ahead, I'm going to give a homily each week from the scriptures, the same homily I would try and give at Mass on the weekend. I'm going to try and give you that homily on YouTube, but really try and relate to what's going on in our lives at the moment. It'll be a homily for this time that will make probably no sense in a year's time. It's a homily for here and now. So on Sunday, I'll be reflecting with you on the story of Jesus raising Lazarus from the dead and how we see Jesus calling forth life in the midst of a place of death. Next week, which is Palm Sunday or Passion Sunday, we'll try and look honestly at the experience of suffering which so many people are having as businesses shut down and people lose jobs and so much else is changing. Let's be honest about the kind of suffering that entails and see how we might draw near to Jesus on his way to the cross. And then on Easter Sunday, we can look at the ways in which God's new life sprung forth in Jesus as he emerged from the tomb, but how God might indeed bring new life to us in this extraordinary moment of our history and our lives. And in between each Sunday homily, I'll try and offer you messages like this one, which might show how we might as a community of faith gather in new ways in the online space. So God bless you and your families. There'll be information in the link below about how you can reach out to the parish if we can support you in any way. God bless you.